Well, first of all, welcome to everybody out there. We're all facing great challenges at the moment, and I think it shows to our agility and adaptability as organizations around the world that we're able to move from the physical to the virtual, and we're all able to get together here as a community. I want to welcome each and every one of you into my home. As each of you is, I thank you for welcoming us into yours. Um, so it would be good to understand exactly where in the globe we're coming from. So if a few people could please just ping out just where you're coming from, it'd be interesting to find out whereabouts in the world we're exactly speaking to at this moment in time. So introduce myself. My name's Stephen Walters. I'm a solutions architect from within X Matters, and it's my absolute pleasure to host today's proceedings. Wow. California, Colorado, San Francisco, Virginia, Salford in the UK. Yeah, I know where that is. And from Dallas, Texas. Wow, okay, New Jersey. We've got a lot of people from the US here. Small town in California. Is that an actual place or just a small town? I get where you're coming from. Great. It's great to see such an international group. As I say, my name's Stephen Walters. I'm actually coming to you from a small town called Stone in Staffordshire in the heart of the United Kingdom. At Liat, I'm sure she'll inform us exactly where she's coming from as well as part of her introduction. Let me just talk about some of the proceedings about how we'll go into today. We will have a first presentation from Liat. As part of that, she's very happy to receive any kind of questions that you may want to put to her. So please go into the Q&A section, enter your questions. I'll try to put a few in during the actual presentation. Liat's happy to answer those as we go through those. Anything we're not able to answer during the presentation, we'll have a brief Q&A session at the end, and we'll try to get through as many as we can there. But don't be concerned if we don't get to your question in that time. There is going to be a Slack channel available to you. It should be available and visible for you now in the chat section, flowlive.slack.com. Go to hashtag meet the speaker channel and you'll be able to ask more questions of Liat and Alison, our other speaker, later on after the event. More information on that later. So for now, what I want to do is I want to introduce you to Liat and today's first talk. Liat is on a mission to transform Amdocs, the biggest telecommunications software provider, an organization with over 27,000 employees spread over 85 countries. Educated as a developer with more than 20 years experience in the software industry, she served as a Scrum Master and an Agile coach. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Liat Palace.
Hi, hello everyone. Happy to be here. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so today we are going to talk about our experience in Amdocs and the learning that we've gained through trying to change our culture. And I will walk you through the story and what we've learned, and we'll be happy also to answer your questions. But before we will begin, I would like to ask you a few questions to get familiar with you a little bit more. So can we launch the first poll, please? Okay, thank you. So please pick what is your current role. I would like to get you to know you a little bit better. And also we have a second questions regarding your organization size. Good. Okay, good. Thank you for answering and sharing with us Okay, so usually I'm asking those questions in order to make sure that the talk that I'm giving you is more relevant to you. Belinda, can you move? Thank you. Thank you. So our story is a fascinating story about genes. Okay, and usually I'm starting off with asking, does anyone know what 34,000 stands for? And this is an interesting question, and later on you will understand also why I'm talking about genes. But in general, we're talking about the human genome that I guess that you are all familiar with this project. It was a very ambitious project that started off 10 years ago. Uh, we tried to play God for a minute to understand what is the blueprint behind the human manufacture. How can we create a human being with certain qualities? How can we better ourselves? How can we create maybe or replica of another Einstein or another Mozart? This is really interesting science, and this project was very ambitious, going through each and every genome, mapping it, understanding what it is responsible for. And does anyone know how this project ended up with? You can go to the next slide. So it ended up really sciencey, mainly because this project did not really reveal to us what we are made of. Science knows for years that the human body consists of um, proteins, and we have more than 100,000 of them. We have 100,000 different types of protein, and each protein is built out of one gene. That means that we are missing two-thirds of the instructions. So we have a blueprint, but the blueprint does not really contain the instructions of how, how we are made. This was really interesting to discover. And the reason that I'm talking about that is not because I am a scientist, not at all. I'm leading the Agile and DevOps Transformation in Amdocs Delivery. And I'm working there for the last 13 years. Um, Amdocs was established 37 years ago. This is a very veteran company that behaved in one way when it was established, and it grew like any other company. And eventually, there were so many complexities and so many things that they learned through the years. And we came into a situation where we understood that the culture that we have in our organization need to be changed in order to allow us to accelerate. So we have implemented Agile and DevOps, but the mindset didn't shift in a way that really allow us to accelerate to the extent that we wanted. And my role in this journey was to try and find some kind of a solution of how we can change this culture in order to allow the change and allow real agility into our organization. So in order to solve this issue, I started to investigate, and I think that I was not able to find any answer for this question anywhere. And I tried to look on other fields like genetics. It, it sounds to me like the hidden code of how organizations behave or how you as an individual that join an organization need to behave, it should be coded somewhere. You should have some subtext of instructions So where you are there, you are getting certain signals that really helps you to understand how you should behave and how you should react in certain situations. So this is why I started to learn genetics a little bit to understand how they solve this kind of situation when you have a blueprint and you need to change it. The interesting thing was that I revealed that the blueprint does not contain the entire code for how to really develop, how to manufacture. It was something else. And the answer to this question, how come, um, I can recall a very famous experiment that is publicly known when you are taking stem cell, just one stem cell, and you are duplicating it. So you have three stem cells which are identical, and then you put them in different environments. And what will happen to these stem cells that contain exactly the same DNA and exactly the same blueprint? What will happen to them is that they will create different cells. One can become a muscle cell, another can become a bone cell. They are all coded the same. What is the difference between those and why they evolve differently? This is because of the environment. So if we are talking about why need to change culture, why this is so crucial, I think that everything that we know or everything that was true up to 20, 30 years ago, and still we have it in many of the veterans companies, is not true anymore. We have new platforms, we have new requirements, we have new players in the market, and we need to know how to react. And as long as your organization is big, or maybe even huge, it makes it more difficult. You need to align more people. You need to make sure that everyone are running to the same direction, that everyone understands the vision, the goals, and it becomes really, really complex. And this was my main problem to solve. So started off with understanding how culture is being created. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so I think that it was really crucial to understand first how culture is being created and how come I can take one person and put him in Amdocs and he will behave in one way, and if I will put him in another organization, he will behave in another way. So what makes it happen and how can we control it and how can we change it? So main three things that we were able to observe. There are different ways to convey culture. One of them is learned. What do I mean by that? There are some slogans that different organization has. For example, in Amdocs, our slogan is "We deliver." We deliver software. This is what we do. You probably use some of our software if you're consuming any telecommunication or media. Anyway, we are totally committed and we are going to deliver. So this is a message that every new employee will get. And this is a message that our executives are repeating again and again and again. But what does this message really mean? If we deliver, what kind of decision will we make if we need to deliver, but we are not very sure of the software quality by a certain point?
Liat,
Mhm.
a question that's coming through basically at this
Yes.
moment in time. Are we basically saying that every individual and any individual within an organization can influence the change in the culture, sometimes just small, but sometimes extremely large?
Yeah, so I think that individual can influence, but they have minor influence and mainly influencing on the direct environment that they are in contact with. If we are talking about organizations of thousands of people that spread around the world, it is unlikely that one person that is not, part of the leadership will have all the channels to change the culture one from one behavior to totally different one by himself. This is not a change of one individual, usually, okay, from what I know and what I see. But we do need to understand the subtext of the messages that are going around in the organization. So if we are talking about what we teach the newcomers, the people that are onboarded to the company, they look on the things that are written on the wall. They look on the messages that they are getting from the welcome decks or the welcome meetings. And there are messages that are being conveyed there. For example, I gave the we deliver, but the issue is that you can give one message, but they can understand something else. And the example of we deliver is that sometimes people understand that they should compromise on quality in order to deliver, because deliver is more important than anything else. And this is something that might be a little bit dangerous. And I don't think that anyone that came up with this slogan really thought about how it will be taken by the people on the ground that need to act by it. So sometimes they will translate it to something else. Okay, this is one example. Another example is looking on demonstration of behavior. When I joined Amdocs as a new developer, I had a mentor that sat just next to me. No, not as we now all connected from home, but we sat in the same office. And this mentor showed me the product and what need to be done. And then there was an interruption. There was a pop-up window with a message, "Hi, can you please help? I have a question." And then my mentor stopped for a minute and said, "Okay, 1 minute, I'm going to answer this question, and then I'm going to go back to you." And the message that I got by this behavior is that answering other questions and helping others is more important than completing my own work. And this is part of the culture as well. And this is something that I observed as a new joiner. Okay, so need to pay attention to behavior and how you are demonstrating your behavior to others, because there is a subtext to this behavior. Another thing that we need to pay attention to is the environment itself and the processes. For example, if quality is a big thing for us, and usually it is, okay, we don't want to have crappy code going into production. So we need to make sure that we are not measuring our people upon their availability on Saturday afternoon for production issues. Okay, so sometimes I do see that the main message is that we care so much about quality, and quality is everything. And when we are coming to the conversation with the employee, the manager is talking about this person availability. So there is a conflict in messages here, and this kind of conflicts create a new message that this employee understands that being available during the weekend is more important than having quality in place. And this is just another example. So let's move on to the next slide. So I'm going to talk to you today about ways to change your culture. And this is something generic that you can take to your organization, try to observe the different behaviors and influence them. So we need to keep in mind that we are all working in a very stressed environment. We have milestones, we have commercial obligations, we need to make sure that we are on time. And making a change while we need to still meet our commitments is very challenging. So I'm going to address that as well. Please move to the next slide. The first step when we are starting off and we would like to understand what is currently our environment, what culture we have, what is the main messages that we want to convey, and what are the messages that really runs around and what people understand from them. We need to start from the end. We need to understand our company goals, and this is not even related to culture, but in order to make the culture work for us, we need to understand what we are aiming for. So we need to have that in place. We need to look on the KPIs and the measurements that we have in our company. Usually we will find conflicts between those KPIs and measurements to the main messages that we would like to pass on to our employees. And this is important. We need to look on handovers. We need to look on issues of empowerment. And I really suggest you to to use value stream mapping, to map the value stream, and to look on the cultural behavior that goes along with this value stream. This will be mainly helpful. Can you go to the next slide? This will be mainly helpful in order to prioritize. And this is mainly because you will find so many things that are wrong and so many things that you need to tackle and so many things that you need to fix. It will really confuse you. And we cannot do everything at once. And we already said that this is already a train on the way, and we need to make sure that we are not in the way for this train, but helping it to move faster. So we need to make sure that we are able to prioritize and understand what is the most important thing that we need to handle now. Now, there were some questions that have been asked before. So how can we know how much we can do in parallel and how much we should prioritize and what should be the steps? So value stream mapping will help us to understand in which part of the end-to-end process we having problems, and we will need to start from there. And it depends on how many people we have in order to lead this change and change those processes so that we will understand what is our capacity for implementing this change. You can go to the next slide, please. One tip that I would like to advise you is that if you can use existing processes in order to implement change, use them. Don't invent new processes if you have processes that you just can change the content of them. For example, if we are talking about evaluation, let's change the content of the discussion and make sure that the company vision and values are being, we are going through all of them during this conversation and not going through what the specific manager would like his employees to do. And this should be something that is more guided. So if we want to have a good message as a company without any local conflicts, we need at least part of the evaluation to take into consideration the main values that we would like to promote. Let's go to the next slide. Another thing that is really important, and because we cannot lead a change alone, okay? There is no one person or not even a group of 50 persons can really make everyone change. We need to connect the people to the change itself. And how can we make them happy about the change? I think that we should connect the change to the pain points that they already have. So if they are suffering, let's say that today, the way that the grooming is being done, or there is not enough involvement of business. So we need to connect it to the processes that we are going to change and the messages that we would like to give on the cultural level. And when people understand that we are actually trying to solve their problem, they will help us. And then we will have a guiding coalition for this change. Next slide, please. One of the things that we see often is that we are trying to implement changes in a waterfall way. That means that we are doing some kind of a flash cut. From tomorrow, we are starting to work totally differently and everything is going to be changed. And we need to make sure that also the way that we are implementing the change, and we said that we need to prioritize because we cannot handle everything at once, we can also gain confidence by starting small and iterating. That means that we will select the most prioritized item to take on, and then we will iterate. Let's continue to the next slide. Getting feedback on the change process is crucial, and I can tell you that I don't see many coaches or even leaders trying to get feedback on the changes that they're trying to implement. This is very valuable and important. It also gives the people an opportunity to speak up, suggest suggestions, and create a channel of communication which is bidirectional, and not only the management or leadership telling the people what to do, but they can get some kind of a feedback, some kind of a reaction that they can relate to and also validate their initial thinking. Let's continue. Getting feedback is not enough, mainly because many of the people that are getting this feedback is not doing anything about it. So it is important that after we are getting any feedback, that immediately we will respond and immediately we will adjust and make sure that whatever was raised to us was not ignored. Even if we decided to ignore, we need to explain why. And we need to convey the message that we are not ignoring. We are listening, and still we may take a decision not to change anything. But at least it is communicated, then the people are more relaxed and trust you better for that change. Let's continue. I want to address 6 common mistakes, things that we see a lot when trying to change an organization, go for more of an agile way of working. And there are some mistakes that can really harm us along the way, and we would like to avoid those. We will start with the first one. You can move to the next slide. The most important thing about a change is to have some kind of a sense of urgency or sense of purpose. People need to understand why we are changing, and this is the most important thing. If we understand the urgency, if we understand why we need to do something, it will be easier for us to take decisions, to understand the direction, and not just follow a prescription of actions that need to be done without even having the ability to think or question it. And we need to have the power of the entire organization. So I can tell you that when we transformed Amdocs, 50% of our learning material spoke about why. Why now? Why can it be done here? Why technology change? Why changing mindset? And a lot of why. And this was the main learning objective. And I can really say that it helps us a lot. Let's go to the next slide. Another thing that is very important to avoid is competition. And I know that many managers and in many organizations, people like competition, they like to win, but sometimes it can just ruin the human interaction. So people compete against each other. It can create some kind of a blaming culture, and not everyone would like to collaborate when you are under competition. Gamification is far better than competition. So try to use that. Don't use big prizes, something small. Don't get anyone envy or jealous. And try also to have the prizes for teams and not for individuals. Let's go to the next slide, please. We are talking about communication, and I mentioned it before. We need to make sure that communication is not a one-way thing. We are not just saying or telling the people what to do. We need to create also a feedback communication channel. And this is important that people will know that they can react, that they can raise issues, and they have someone that is willing to listen to them. Let's go to the next slide, please. Another thing that is very important, and I see it a lot, mainly in big organizations, you have different business units, and everyone are trying to optimize their own. So there might be that one business unit will be the product, another business unit will be the delivery, and everyone are trying to optimize their own. And the local optimization does not contribute to the global one. You might have a great local optimization, but the global one can be harmed. So looking overall on the system and understanding all the contributors is much more important than having a local optimization. And it is also related to the organization structure. Sometimes the structure is working against the culture that we would like to have. Please move to the next slide. We are talking a lot about innovation, and we would like to make sure that we have capability to innovate and react, and people can come up with ideas and try and learn. One of the main things that we need to have in place is tolerance to failure. And usually I'm saying that this is also our fault in many cases. And what do I mean by that? Sometimes we just want to try out something, but no one can really support us because we do not know how much time we're going to spend into this innovation, how much resources, what is the actual risk of not succeeding or succeeding. So for example, if I will go to my manager and I will ask to try a new technology, maybe it will be too risky, but if I will say I would like to try this technology for one sprint, having two people working on that, so now he understands and has a calculated risk. So in the worst case, we will fail, or maybe we will learn something, but he understands exactly what he's risking. And this is something that we need to get used to talking this language, because just having experiment without any boundaries is also dangerous for the organization. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, the last thing that I would like to mention as a common mistake that we have is that we are in an endless journey. So people are asking me, are we DevOps yet? Are we Agile yet? The answer is always, the organization is keep on changing, the environment is changing all the time, technology is changing, everything is changing. So if we will stop reacting, and if we will stop observing our culture, our practices, our technology, we will stay behind. This is not a journey with an end date. This is something that we need to be very much alerted of, and we need to make sure that we are looking and observing on that all the time, and we are improving and reacting adapting to the changing environment all the time. Let's move to the next slide. So how come 34,000 genes become 100,000 proteins? The answer is the environment. The way that people interpret the messages that they are getting, the way that behavior demonstrate culture that should be adopted, the messages that might be conflicting, all of this subtext is what creates our environment. And we need to be aware of that. It is not enough that we will say something. We need also to understand how might others understand it and how they're going to react to this. And I think that this is the main message that I would like to give to you today.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Liat. There's still an opportunity to ask questions. Please get into the Q&A panel and ask any questions that you have in there. In the meantime, I do have some questions here, Liat, if you're just open to answer some of these.
Sure.
So how do you deal with when you get resistance to cultural change? So you may in particular get subcultures that operate within silos, and those silos will bump up against each other and there will already be conflict. How do you go about resolving that conflict to break down those silo walls?
Yeah, so this is really something that is very, very common, and we see that really a lot. So usually those kind of arguments are on specific things, like I want to use this tool, no, he wants to use that tool, our team is doing it like this, your team is doing it like that. Usually the best way to resolve those kind of conflicts is to take the discussion one level up, saying, okay, what do we want to achieve? Okay, let's not talk about the technicalities of how to do that. Okay, let's create first an alignment on a higher level. And this is easy to achieve because usually everyone will understand what needs to be done and how we should achieve it. And then when we will go to the technicalities, the discussion will be much easier. So usually when you see those kind of discussions, take it one level up.
And it's probably something about finding a common ground then between them, or a common vision or goal. Or
exactly, because everyone are contributing to the same organization. So no one will go against the organization that they are working at, right? Mm-hmm. So there will be some kind of a common level of understanding, and we need to work from there. First, let's look on what is common and what we would like to achieve. And then let's drill down and see how we are doing it together. So usually this is working for me.
You mentioned around value stream. You mentioned around value stream mapping, which is part of a lean engineering kind of practice. What typically goes into that kind of thing? What makes a value stream mapping an exercise a success, and what could potentially hinder it?
I think that, once you are, even the process itself brings a lot of value. You need to bring the people together and talk about the full end-to-end process. And usually you will see that in the same room you have people and they are not familiar with many steps in the process. And this is the first time that they see it. So they have a better understanding of how the system operates end-to-end. And this is already some win for you. And going into that and understanding, for example, and we see many organizations, and one of our biggest customers in North America, they asked us to accelerate the development cycle. Okay, it was a cycle of, I think, 1 month, and they wanted it to be 3 weeks. And we did a short value stream mapping and found out that the time that it takes to go from the idea funnel of the organization portfolio to the team's backlog for starting to work on that is taking approximately 40 weeks. So they wanted to accelerate development that takes 4 weeks, while the ideation itself took 40 weeks, almost 1 year. And we could shorten it to 5 weeks, and this really create an impact. And this is why value stream mappings are so important, because in many cases, our gut feeling will take us to put improvement in the wrong place.
So the toil is often somewhere where it's not seen and where it's not perceived. Yeah.
Exactly.
I have a question on feedback from Dan. Should the company ask for feedback through public or private channels?
I think that it is really dependent on the culture of this organization. You know, some organizations are fully transparent and would like to open up, and this is also depends on how people will take it. But if you feel that people will not be confident enough even to raise issue, if you have a full transparent channel with the name on the issue that they would like to raise, let's start off with not having it publicly. Just having their feedback is the most important thing. Okay, just make sure that they will use that mechanism and give feedback. You can have it on roundtables. You can have it on anonymous surveys. You can have it on, on open conversations. It doesn't matter, but need to just to give it a chance and give people also a chance to feedback you. And usually the way that managers will react to that feedback, this is what will trigger the next feedback, if it will happen or not. You know, because if a manager will be mad and say, who is this person that wrote it? I'm going to go to his manager and I'm going to show him this is not blah, 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 blah. So they will not feel secure enough to come again. So the leadership need to know that they need to listen and not to react immediately, to say, thank you for the feedback. I would like maybe to understand a little bit more or something like this. The channels is really something that is dependent on the company. And if you have some kind of an open channel that people can connect to the leadership already, great. If not, you can open a generic mailbox. You can open, I don't know, even a Slack. It doesn't matter. As long as people are there. If they don't feel comfortable to do that, have it anonymous without their name on that, so they will just be able to write down what they feel, at least at the beginning. And very important, to respond publicly. Okay, that means we got feedback about this and this and that and that, and this is what we are going to do about it, or we decided not to do nothing about it, but those are the reasons why. So it should be some kind of a ping pong conversation. You need to make sure that the ball doesn't stay within the leadership only.
Okay. Liat Palace, thank you very much. I really enjoyed that talk. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the answers to your questions.